While scrolling through the woods behind my house today, I found a patch of oyster mushrooms. I love oyster mushrooms just because they're delicious and they have some health benefits too. And I also just feel like I have an affinity for them because this was the first mushroom that I successfully identified and harvested as an adult. They are pretty easy to identify, so I think that they're a great mushroom for beginner mushroom hunters to go looking for. And if you're not looking for them, then you're missing out on great food and medicine. The first identifying feature is what they're growing on. They'll usually be growing on the side of a dead or dying tree or a stump or a fallen log. They might be growing out of the ground. If they are, they're actually growing on dead wood that's under the soil. Second thing you want to look for, make sure that it's in a cluster. If it's growing by itself, it's probably not an oyster. And then take a look at those gills underneath that cap. You don't see much of a stem, but what little stem or stipe that mushroom does have, the gills run all the way down it, all the way into the substrate or the medium that it's growing out of. If you've got a mushroom that looks like that, you've probably got an oyster. Now, I do think there might be some shelf-like mushrooms that resemble an oyster, like these guys here, but if you take a look at them, they don't have gills. They have polypores. And if you take a look at these guys, they have polypores too, if you were to look underneath that cap. Plus, they're growing individually. Oysters are always going to grow in clusters, even if they're just small clusters like this. And they might be growing higher up. They usually don't grow too close to the ground, but sometimes they can. Sometimes they grow in really large clusters. Now, if there's one poisonous lookalike that I'd be wary of, it's this here, the jack-o'-lantern. Your jack-o'-lantern grows in clusters like oysters, and its gills do kind of run down the stem. But you don't want to put this in your mouth, because if you do, it'll make you sick for days. So, to make sure that you have oysters and not jack-o'-lanterns, take a look at the stem or the stipe and see how far the gills run down. With your oysters, they'll run all the way down, but you see with the jack-o'-lantern here, they kind of just run halfway down the stem. You'll also notice that the jack-o'-lanterns have a much more defined stem or stipe than the oyster mushroom does. But a really good way to identify a jack-o'-lantern mushroom is to take it home and turn off the lights. Jack-o'-lanterns are bioluminescent, so if it glows in the dark, you probably don't want to eat it. I think that the jack-o'-lantern is a really cool mushroom, and it's one that I really admire, but it will make you sick. Now, your oyster mushrooms, I use them about the same way that I would use portobellos from the grocery store. They're similar in size and taste, so you can stuff them and throw them on the grill, or you can grill them up like a mushroom steak. They also have a lot of good medicinal properties, too. They're good for your immune health, your gut health, and they can help regulate blood sugar.